The Hill, 21st of January 2023, Liu He of China in Davos, every phrase was a lie. The dishonesty and evasion of Chinese Vice Premier Liu He's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, stood out. It brings to mind how political activist and novelist Mary McCarthy dissed Lillian Hellman, declaring that everything she writes is a lie, including and the. The main thrust of Liu's argument was that China is back to its old ways. He claimed that China welcomes the return on foreign investment. He contended that China welcomes the return on foreign investment. He argued that reforms and the end of the emphasis on the ideology pushed by Xi Jinping rather than economic development should encourage investors to look favorably upon China's economy. Additionally, Liu asserted that China will give the international community and the environment lip service in 2023 and that its economic growth will return to normal. In actuality, China's economy is in free fall due to anemic economic growth, about 3%, brought on by severe structural issues in the economy, demographic decline, a downturn in the real estate market, pressure from the United States on its tech sector, investors wary of the influence of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and the viability of alternatives like India, Indonesia, and Vietnam. The COVID-19 biological warfare pandemic and the cessation of its zero-COVID policy, which allowed the virus to spread among the populace, have been the leading causes of its decline. Xi and the CCP will always have a say in conducting business in China. The unfortunate situation involving Alibaba founder Jack Ma, who criticized the nation's financial regulators, demonstrates that the party will not allow even the slightest hint of independence from its control or the emergence of a potential political rival from the business world or any other community. Beijing is making every effort to undermine the current international order and replace it with one that Beijing defines and maintains, as opposed to assisting it. Meanwhile, Liu's comments on climate change were a master study in deceit. The potential link between climate change and public health concerns, he claimed, was made clear by COVID-19. It may have been triggered by Chinese people eating raw bats or a leak from the Wuhan Institute for Biological Warfare. Since the CPC's actions guarantee that the virus's outbreak turned into a pandemic through its deception of international health authorities like the World Health Organization and public health authorities in other countries, an honest man would feel embarrassed and ashamed after mouthing his words. In conclusion, Liu probably lied about all he said. This is likely because the party is well aware of its weaknesses and is worried that if those vulnerabilities are exploited, elites at the World Economic Forum could seriously threaten their ability to maintain power. Liu's speech reveals the frailties and vulnerabilities of the CCP. China's economic crisis threatens the party's hold on power. That control is in jeopardy due to COVID's terrible impact on China's population and the failure of the zero-COVID strategy, as demonstrated by the blank-page protests last October. The party sent Liu to Davos to weave a web of deceit. Still, the implications of these vulnerabilities are considerably more severe. They show that the regime is weak, and pressure should be used to take advantage of these weaknesses. A forceful response to China's expansion from other nations will increase pressure on the CCP, increasing the likelihood of its overthrow. To achieve this, Chinese investment might be discouraged or outlawed in favor of foreign or domestic production. Investors in China who accept CCP funds or permit it to raise capital on their markets should be given a chance to discuss their positions on the party's aggression and human rights violations. We must criticize China's record on human rights and the severe wrongdoings committed by the party against its people. Instead of being applauded for China's appalling environmental record, Chinese officials such as Liu should be held accountable in international forums. A Chinese official should not be allowed to complain about the link between climate change and global health crises without being asked to address China's role in the pandemic outbreak. States must also exert pressure on the party by denouncing China's appalling human rights record and mistreatment of its ethnic and religious minorities, notably in Tibet and Xinjiang. Outside China, local measures inside states are also required. One example is the newly formed House Committee on the China Menace, led by Representative Mike Gallagher, Republican Wisconsin. This committee can draw attention to China's aggression, Xi's adherence to the Marxist-Leninist-Maoist ideology, which is a significant cause of China's hostility, as well as China's egregious violations of human rights and its assaults on the American people via fentanyl and other means, as well as via technology and apps like TikTok. Their research and testimony may refute fabrications like clues and inform the public why the CCP is a threat to all Americans and should be regarded as such. Liu's speech must be viewed as an attempt to mislead the world about the CCP, the proper health of China's economy, and its political stability. It also represents an effort to persuade the world that China is once again experiencing tremendous economic growth. In actuality, Liu's comments were incredibly illuminating regarding the fears of China's leadership. The appearance of Liu in Davos sought to signal a turning point: the CCP's violations of the environment and human rights, as well as its hostility toward nations and the international system that allowed for the World Economic Forum, will no longer be accepted. The party must see that the world will not get its blatant lies,